The neighborhood stood as a carefully manicured collection of homes, each painted in shades of beige, white or gray, with lawns trimmed so precisely that they could have been measured with rulers. The Homeowners Association prided itself on standards, which in reality translated to control, micromanagement and constant surveillance of anyone who dared step outside the invisible boundaries drawn by the board. It was not enough to own a home, one had to own it the right way, their way. Among all the houses and the tightly plotted streets lay a piece of land that did not fit neatly into their box of conformity. It was a wide stretch of green, more rustic than polished, with wildflowers sprouting in the spring and golden grass bending in the late summer breeze. Old oak trees shaded part of the lot, and a creek trickled lazily along one side. Unlike the clipped perfection of the HOA's approved lawns, this land looked untamed, natural, almost alive. The homeowner who possessed it valued it for its freedom. It was not a sprawling mansion nor a perfectly edged garden. It was a piece of earth that carried history, character, and potential. The HOA, however, saw only what it was not. It was not controlled, it was not uniform, and worst of all, it was not profitable for them. For years, complaints trickled in about the land. It was unkempt, they said. It was an eyesore. Karen, the loudest unofficial enforcer of the rules, often made the loudest remarks. To her, the wildness of the land was offensive, a stain on the carefully curated order of the community. She wanted fences, she wanted conformity, and if that could not be achieved, she wanted the land gone altogether. The board began sending letters. At first they were polite but insistent. Mow it down, clear it out, turn it into something presentable. When those were ignored, they escalated into threats of fines. Hen came legal letters suggesting the land itself was misused and could be seized under neighborhood ordinances. The homeowner, however, refused to bend. Instead of seeing the land as useless, they saw possibilities. If the HOA wanted to take it, why not transform it into something that made it undeniable in value? Why not let the very thing the HOA despised, the openness, the color, the uniqueness, become its greatest strength? And so, quietly, the transformation began. Gravel paths were laid out under the oaks, benches placed along the creekside, and a wide-open clearing was trimmed and shaped, not into sterile uniformity, but into a space where people could gather. At first, it looked like nothing more than someone tidying their yard, but slowly the design became apparent. Arches were installed, vines encouraged to crawl along them, and flowers were carefully planted in rows to bloom in waves of color throughout the seasons. What the HOA thought was a stubborn refusal to comply was in fact the construction of something far greater. The land was being shaped into a venue, not just any venue, but one that would soon host celebrations, joy, and moments the HOA would have no power to erase. By the time Karen and her allies noticed, it was too late. The first inquiries were already coming in, couples looking for a charming outdoor space for weddings. What had once been called an eyesore was now being described by strangers as picturesque, serene, and perfect. The HOA thought they could pressure one person into surrender. What they didn't realize was that the land was on the verge of becoming untouchable. Because when a space becomes a business, a certified venue, and a place for the public to gather, it falls beyond the petty reach of neighborhood rules. The first chapter ended with the land no longer just a plot of grass, but a vision in bloom. The HOA thought they were about to win, but instead they had triggered the creation of something they could never control. End of Chapter 1. Natural break for continuation. The news of the transformation spread quickly. Word of mouth carried the story from neighbor to neighbor, but soon it traveled beyond the cul-de-sac, beyond the neighborhood, and into the wider community. Couples looking for places to hold weddings often struggled with costs and availability. Yet here was a private property offering a picturesque space surrounded by oak trees and wildflowers. The first wedding was modest, but unforgettable. Guests walked along the gravel paths beneath lanterns strung between trees, music played softly in the clearing, and vows were spoken beneath an arch covered in blooming vines. Photos captured the golden sunset, reflecting off the creek, with the wild, natural beauty of the land serving as the backdrop. It was everything the HOA despised: uncontrolled, colourful, alive, and everything everyone else adored. After that, the bookings poured in. Week after week, the land was filled with celebrations. Brides walked down makeshift aisles of wildflowers, guests clapped beneath the shade of the oaks, and laughter echoed across the once useless space. What had been labelled an eyesore was now the heart of joy for countless families. The HOA, however, was furious. Karen, in particular, treated each wedding as an insult, claiming that the noise, the traffic, and the crowds ruined the character of the neighbourhood. She called emergency meetings, drafted letters, and even threatened lawsuits. Yet each attempt fizzled out when confronted with the fact that the land was operating as a legitimate business, with permits, licenses, and community support. Local authorities inspected the property and found no violations. In fact, they praised the effort, noting the positive economic impact. Local florists, caterers, and photographers benefited from the venue's existence, and nearby businesses enjoyed the influx of customers. What the HOA tried to paint as a nuisance was quickly reframed as an asset to the town. The more Karen fumed, the more the weddings multiplied. Soon the venue expanded with fairy lights strung across the trees, a small gazebo added near the creek, and an open-air tent to shield guests from unexpected rain. The land evolved into something professional, elegant, and deeply beloved. Neighbors who once sided with the HOA began to waver. They saw the joy brought to others, the beauty created, and the recognition the land now carried. Where Karen saw chaos, others saw charm. The story spread online. Pictures of the weddings began to circulate on social media, shared by guests and couples. Posts were tagged with captions like "hidden gem" and "most beautiful outdoor wedding spot." What began as a neighborhood squabble became a viral sensation. Soon articles appeared in lifestyle blogs, and local news crews arrived to film segments about the backyard wedding venue taking the town by storm. Each new feature made the HOA look smaller, pettier, and more powerless. Their endless attempts to control the land had backfired spectacularly. Instead of erasing what they disliked, they had amplified it until it became unstoppable. The second chapter closed with the land shining under fairy lights, couples dancing beneath the stars, and the HOA left standing outside the fence, powerless to do anything but watch as joy triumphed over control. End of Chapter 2. Natural break for continuation. By the time the venue had been open for a year, it was no longer just a business, it was a landmark. Couples traveled from other towns, sometimes even other states, just to hold their ceremonies there. What began as one homeowner's resistance had grown into something far larger, something that neither the HOA nor Karen could ever have imagined. The venue continued to expand. A permanent pavilion was built near the creek, designed with rustic beams and open sides to blend with the natural setting. Professional landscaping was added, not to sterilize the land, but to enhance its wild beauty. Seasonal gardens bloomed with color, and a small bridge was built across the creek, perfect for photos. Every season brought new life. Spring weddings were filled with blossoms and fresh green leaves. Summer brought golden evenings with fireflies dancing in the air. Autumn created a carpet of colorful leaves, and winter saw candle-lit ceremonies beneath the bare branches of the oaks. The land had become timeless, adapting itself to the cycles of the year, offering beauty in every form. The HOA's role had diminished to nothing. Their letters stopped, their threats ended, and their power evaporated. Karen's once commanding voice grew quieter until it disappeared entirely. She no longer stormed through meetings or sent endless complaints, because each attempt had only made her the subject of ridicule. Her crusade against the land had ended in humiliation. Instead, the community embraced the venue. Local businesses thrived on the steady flow of guests. Photographers built entire portfolios from its backdrops, and countless couples carried memories of their vows spoken beneath the trees. The homeowner, once just another resident in a neighborhood of conformity, had become something more, a symbol of defiance, creativity, and resilience. The land was no longer just private property. It was a story, one retold by every couple who married there and every guest who shared a photo online. The HOA had tried to erase it, to take it away, to claim it was unworthy. Instead, it became untouchable, By turning the land into a place of joy and unity, the homeowner had done what no rule, no fine, and no threat could undo. Years later, the venue still thrived. The oaks grew taller, the creek flowed steadily, and the laughter of weddings filled the air. Children who once attended as flower girls and ring bearers returned as brides and grooms, carrying on the cycle of memories. The land had become a legacy, one that would outlast every complaint, every threat, and every attempt at control. The story closed not with defeat, but with triumph. What began as a fight over property ended as proof that individuality, creativity, and joy could outshine the most rigid rules. The HOA had tried to take the land. Instead, they had given it purpose.